Good morning, teachers and my classmates. I am Wachira. Today, I'm going to share you and present you about the tool of statistics. The tool of statistics is the Mann Whitney U Test. First, we have to know about the generals and the meanings of Mann Whitney U Test. What is the Mann Whitney U Test? The Mann Whitney U Test is the non-parametric equivalent of the two sample tests. While the t-test makes an assumptions about the distributions of a population, that the sample came from a t-distributed population. The Mann Whitney U Test makes no such assumption. This test should be used when you are comparing two places. This is a graph for parametric inferential test assume certain things about the variables being tested, which are sometimes not true, such as the distribution should be somewhat normal, but is actually skewed. When the assumptions of a normal distribution is not made, there is another class of statistical tests which can still answer important questions. These tests are called non-parametric tests. One non-parametric test is the Mann Whitney U test, which is an analytical to the independent sample t-test. Remember that the independent t-test compares the means of dependence variable pizza-like consumptions across two levels, football and basketball player, of an independent variable. They are the type of athletes. The first athlete is football player, and the second athlete is basketball player. These two distributions happen to be normally distributed. Average of 5 slides, average of 9 slides. So we should use an independent sample t-test. But what if one or both of the distribution were not normal? We compare between the athlete, football player, and basketball player. See, average of 8 slides is basketball player. An average of 9 slides is football player. They are very different. Below, we compare the means of these two groups with their medians. The median very different. The medians of the football player is 9, and the medians of basketball player is 8. Notice how the median is not sensitive, or another way of saying it is resistant to outliers. The Mann Whitney U is a non-parametric test that is not sensitive to outlier because it is computed using the median and not the mean. Because it uses the median, the Mann Whitney U test operated on subjects rank order positions in overall distributions rather than on their deviance from the mean or the differences between the means of the two groups. And next, we have to know about the null hypothesis for the test. What is the null hypothesis for the test? Is it the test compared to populations? The null hypothesis for the test is that the probability is 50%. That's a randomly draw member of the first population. We access a member of the second population. Another option for the null hypothesis is that the two samples come from the same population. Example, that they both have the same median. The result of the following a Mann Whitney U Test is the U statistics for small samples. Use the direct method to find the U statistics for the larger samples. A formula is necessary, or you can use technology like SPSS to run to the test. Look at the formula. The first formula, U1 equal R1 minus N1. Parentheses, open and close, N1 plus 1 divide 2. U2 equal R2 minus N2. Parentheses, open and close, N2 plus 1 divide 2. Either of these two formulas are varies for the Mann Whitney U Test. R is the sum of ranks in the sample, and N is number of items in the sample. Mann Whitney U Test direct methods. The method is limited only by how much computations you want to perform. The larger the sample, the more complex the math. We have the 4 steps for the Mann U Test direct method. First step, name the sample with the smaller lengths. Sample 1, add the sample with the larger lengths. Sample 2, choosing the sample with the smaller lengths to be sample 1 is optional, but it makes the computation easier. Step 2, take the first observations in sample 1, count how many observations in sample 2 are smaller than it. If the observations are equal, count it as 1/2. For example, if you have 10 that are less and 2 that are equal, 10 plus 2, 1, 2 equal 11. Step 3, repeat step 2 for all observations in sample 1. And the last step, adds up all of your totals from the step 2 and 3. This is U statistics. And the last one, assumptions for the Mann Whitney U Test. First, the dependent variable should be measured on an ordinal scale or a continuous scale. Second, the independent variables should be two independent categorical groups. Third, observations should be independent. In other words, there should be no relationship between the two groups or within each group. And the last one, observations are not normally distributed. However, they should follow the same shape. Example, both are bell-shaped and skew left. I think it's my PowerPoint and my presentation will help you to choose the statistic tool in your thesis or in your research. Thank you very much.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Jhon, and welcome to the second part of our video. In the previous video, Wachira discussed about Mann Whitney U Test, its definition, proponent, and assumptions. In this video, I will show you examples of published works that applied Mann Whitney U Test. Also, I will present how to carry out these tests on SPSS. I have made everything brief and clear for easier understanding. But if you wish to explore more about this statistical tool, I found many resources online which I will link in the video description below. Alright, let's get started. Here are some of the many published papers that applied Mann Whitney U Test. The first one here is a research work titled The Effect of Flipped Classroom Model on Students' Classroom Engagement in Teaching English. You can pause the video if you want to read its abstract. This work used Mann Whitney U Test in the analysis of its quantitative data. A comparative study conducted in India in 2017 also used Mann Whitney U Test as one of its statistical tools. You can also pause this video and read the abstract if you wish to know what this study is all about. As we have already learned from the first video, Mann Whitney U Test is a useful non-parametric test that allows two groups or conditions or treatments to be compared without making the assumption that values are normally distributed. A simple search on Google would show us that there are many journals and research work that use this tool in the treatment of their statistical data. Now that you have seen the examples of published outputs that applied Mann Whitney U test, you realize that you might be using this tool in the future when you do your research activities. So the question is, how do we carry out these tests on SPSS? You can also use this test by hand. There is also a formula and a step which you can use or follow to solve your data manually by yourself, or maybe using a calculator. But that would be a lot of work, especially for those who are not mathematically gifted. So fortunately, we can use SPSS to run this test for us. But before that, it's important that we follow the steps of hypothesis testing before doing the test. That is for us to see whether a Mann Whitney U test is the appropriate test to use or not. So let's do the hypothesis testing first. This will just take a few minutes, so please hold your horses. The steps in hypothesis testing. Step 1. State the hypothesis. There are two types of hypothesis, the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. So we state the null hypothesis first. There is no significant difference between the distribution of scores of two groups. And the alternative hypothesis is there is significant difference between the distribution of scores of two groups. To be specific, let's suppose our research question is there a significant difference in the body weight of male and female after taking vitamin B complex once a day for 3 months? Of course, we just made up this research question. Our null hypothesis now is there is no significant difference in the body weight of male and female after taking vitamin B complex once a day for 3 months. And our alternative hypothesis is there is a significant difference in the body weight of male and female after taking vitamin B complex once a day for 3 months. Step 2 is state the level of significance. The significance level, denoted by the Greek letter alpha, is generally set at 0.05. So we're going to follow this significance level. This means that there is 5% chance that you will accept your alternative hypothesis when your null hypothesis is actually true. So the smaller the significance level, the greater the burden of proof needed to reject the null hypothesis. Or in other words, to support the alternative hypothesis. Step 3. Choose statistical tool. In the first part of the video, you learned about assumptions that should be met in order to use Mann Whitney U test. So let's suppose that those 4 assumptions were met. So because those 4 assumptions were met, we have chosen Mann Whitney U test as the appropriate statistical tool. So you see, it is only in this part or in this step of hypothesis testing that we choose which statistical tool to use. Step 4. Collect the data and perform the analysis. As we perform the analysis, we now proceed to, or after we perform the analysis, we now proceed to the final step. Step 5. Report the results and state the conclusion. Alright, so those are the steps in hypothesis testing. Actually, I have not really presented what I did in step 4 and 5, so I will do it now. So here, you'll find answers to the questions we previously asked. How do we perform hypothesis testing on SPSS? So as you may have already guessed, the dependent variable in our study is body weight, and our independent variable is sex, which are male and female. To do the Mann Whitney U test on SPSS, first, we choose Analyze, select Non-Parametric Test, go to Legacy Dialogues, select 2 independent samples, and then highlight your test variable and click on the arrow to move this into the test variable list box. In my example, the test variable is the weight, okay, or the dependent variable is the weight. The next one is highlight the grouping variable and click on the arrow to move this into the grouping variable box. So this time we choose the sex or our independent variable and move it to the grouping variable box. Now below the grouping variable box, you can see there define groups. So we click on that and type in the codes that indicate which group an observation belongs to. So previously we assigned values, 1 for male and 2 for female, and that is what we're going to put here in to indicate the group. After that, we click on continue. Under the test type, make sure that Mann Whitney U Test is selected. And then if you want exact probabilities, you can click on exact and then choose exact and then click continue. In my case, I just followed the default setting and then click OK. So as soon as you click OK, an output window will appear which shows the result of Mann Whitney U test. And then there we can see that the p-value is 0.755. And now we move on to the final step. Step 5, drawing a conclusion. So if the p-value is less than or equal to the significance level, we reject our null hypothesis in favor of our alternative hypothesis. But if the p-value is greater than the significance level, we do not reject our null hypothesis. So here, the p-value is 755, which is greater than the significance level 0.05. So therefore, we accept our null hypothesis. To report the result and make a conclusion, we say there is no significant difference in the body weight of male and female after taking vitamin B complex once a day for 3 months. So this is our null hypothesis, and we just copy and put it in our conclusion. Alright, so there you have it. Thank you so much for watching this video and have a great day. Bye bye.